Hey, this is Mr. Dan from Touch Technologies, and today we're going to continue with our series of tutorials on Sheerpower. Sheerpower is the programming language which is designed primarily for developing business applications. And as a reminder, different programming languages have different domains, different things that they're best at doing, and Sheerpower was designed specifically to develop business applications, do lots and lots of data manipulation, manipulate spreadsheets, etc. Today, we're talking about routines. Sheerpower has three flavors of routines, and by the way, routines in many languages are called functions as well. You'll see that word used sometimes interchangeably. They're not quite the same, but close enough. Sheerpower has three types of routines. We have public routines, which are a little bit unusual. All the variables are public inside the routine unless you declare them as private. And then we have private routines, which is kind of the opposite. All variables are private unless specified as public. This is a bit more traditional on what you normally see. And we have scoped routines, which are also very similar to private, except that all private variables are reset upon entry and exit. So in a private routine, if I set up a variable to have, let's say, the value of 10, and I come back into that routine, it'll still be a 10 unless I initialize it. In a scoped routine, if I set a private variable to a value of 10 and I come on back, it'll be 0 because it got reset. Let's talk a bit about public routines. Public routines are designed to be called from only one place in your code. Public routines are not designed to be some kind of utility or general use routine that you've built. They're designed to declutter complex code, making it easier to understand, easier to debug, and easier to maintain. What's kind of cool in Sheerpower also is that routines can be what's called forward referenced, which means that they can be called before they're declared. So when you write your code, you can write your code referencing, you're calling all the routines you want to call, and then below inside the source code, you can then define those routines. Sheerpower will, at compile time, scan through all your code, find all the routines, gather everything up, and then set up all the references to the routines. This is very different than most programming languages, which require that everything be declared, or you have to set up headers, header files like .h files, things like that. Sheerpower doesn't require any of that. Again, reducing maintenance. This also allows you to write code in a way that you have the major functions at the top or routines at the top, and you have the minor ones below. That kind of like an outline, or how a newspaper is written, like a newspaper article. That's kind of the idea behind how Sheerpower wants you to organize your code. So it's nice and readable. You have major concepts at the top of your code, and then as you drill down, as we say, into the routines, they then call routines that do more minor things, which call routines that do even more minor things, and so on, until the very, very bottom part of your source code are little routines that do tiny little interesting things. So that's how we're designed. It's a pretty cool way to do it. Here's an example of some cluttered code. It's not too cluttered because I did use some white space here. But you'll see it's got the block of code that does some stuff having to do with inputting a cluster of data, figuring out how many riddles we have, then telling us the number of riddles. We have another block of code that has to do with getting a random riddle. That's what this is, our little riddle program here. Printing it out, waiting for an answer. And then we have a final block of code that deals with checking to see what you entered in and was it good. It says, yeah, great, you got it right, or you're on the right track, try again, or just try again. So 3 blocks of code encapsulating 3 different concepts. Now let's declutter that a little bit. So Sheerpower allows us to quickly get blocks of code descriptive names and to extract them into public routines. These descriptive names, as you'll see here, load riddles, choose one riddle, handle answers. This makes this program much easier to maintain. If you find there's a bug in the choose one riddle algorithm, you don't need to look at all that code that was here to load riddles, and you don't need to know or even look at the block of code that handles answers. You can focus directly on choose one riddle. And that makes a nice little story. Load riddles, choose when little, handle answers. Nice and straightforward, nice and readable. Doesn't matter what programming languages you've known previously. This is easy to read. By the way, all Sheerpower routines must contain an underscore. It's part of the design of the language. So here are the first routines. Notice that the identical block of code we had before is in them. Here's the cluster input, here's the riddles, but now it has a nice name called load riddles. Here's our second one, choose one riddle, and you'll see it looks nice and simple. The goal of a routine, generally speaking, and this is true for functions in other languages, your goal should be to have that routine or function do one major thing, and then have subroutines do minor things within it. This is called code encapsulation, or also code abstraction. And here's the third routine. You'll notice how, again, these routines make your code easier to understand. This also results in faster debugging and much, much easier code maintenance. Remember, the major cost of programming is not writing the code, it's maintaining the code. Code maintenance is about 75% of the cost of software development. So you want the code maintenance to be as fast and easy as possible. So that's how we encapsulate code. So far in this first tutorial on routines, we've covered the simplest form of routine. It's called a public routine. Again, public routines are designed to give blocks of code a descriptive name, and you should only really call these things from one place in your code. If you've made some kind of routine that calculates the geodistance of two points in space, you definitely do not want that to be a public routine, because you're going to be calling it from lots of places in your code. That is not what a public routine should do. Public routines are used to declutter your code. In the next tutorial, though, we're going to be covering parameter passing, private variables, and then, of course, private and scoped routines, and a lot more, including how Sheerpower handles recursion. So thank you very much for your time, and remember, as always, to subscribe. Thank you very much.